now that we have a quorum, all the officers and our quiz mistress and our two presenters are all here, and we have a fairly substantial audience, I think. We shall officially inaugurate tonight's meeting of the Metropolitan Washington Old Time Radio Club. Welcome, everybody. My name is Michael Haid. I am your host for this evening as president of the club. And as always, we shall begin with the first 15 minutes of Old Time Radio presented by Mr. Jack French. I understand that we're going to be listening to some very, very, very early work by a man who back on April 2nd would have celebrated his 100th birthday had he not died at the age of 62. Mr. Jack Webb. And so, Jack, let's have it.
Let me first mute everybody and unmute Jack so that there won't be any background noise interference. So let me just mute everybody. There we go. Jack French. Jack. Let's see. Jack, can you? There you go.
Yep. Okay, tonight we're going to listen to one of the very first radio series that Jack Webb was in. This dates to 1946. And at that time, Jack Webb was in San Francisco, just got out of the military from World War II, had three buddies also in their mid-20s who were in radio. Jim Mosier, who was a writer. Dick Breen was another writer. In fact, he was a roommate of Jack Webb's, and Gil Dowd. And Gil Dowd ends up producing this program, which is entitled 1 Out of 7. It was a 15-minute radio program taking on basically topics of the day. And it did so in a manner in which it was so gritty and so graphic that it really didn't last. It was a little bit too tough for even radio. And you'll hear a good example of that tonight. We're going to lead off with the first episode, which is February 1946, in which they create the total picture of a brutal segregationist in the US Senate, Senator Bilbo of Mississippi. The remarkable thing about this program, and those of us particularly used to Jack Webb and thinking he can only do Sergeant Friday, is that Jack Webb does all of the characters in this show. In this particular episode, I think he does about 5 different characters, all quite different. The series lasted only about less than 6 months. We're aware of only from newspaper clippings 7 of the shows, and of that number 5 are in circulation. So there's 5 audio copies of this show in case you'd like to find some other ones after you hear this one. I said it contains graphic language, and it does. We'll hear Senator Bilbo in the voice of Jack Webb screaming out against all those damn Negroes and Catholics and Italians and anybody else he didn't like. And we cover most of them in this program. So here from February 1946, Jack Webb doing all the voices except the announcer. The announcer is Mark Gordon, but Jack does all the other ones. 1 out of 7.
Ladies and gentlemen, the material and direct quotations included in the following program have been taken from authoritative files and from dispatches filed by the Associated Press and International News Service. We present these statements without editorial comment. We assume no responsibility for their content. The American Broadcasting Company presents 1 out of 7. Hours make a day, 7 days make 1 week, And from these past 7 days, the editors here in our San Francisco newsroom have chosen the one story which they have judged most worthy of retelling. This is 1 out of 7. Theodore Bilbo is an honorable man. As a member of the United States Senate, he is looked upon as such by the eyes of the law. Perhaps he is looked upon as such by many or most of his constituents. Though his voice occasionally grate upon the nerves, and his views often confound the innocent, the fact remains, as a member of the Senate of the United States, Theodore Bilbo is an honorable man. And we do not intend to prove otherwise. We merely wish to cite a few samples of his handiwork, and perhaps a supplementary side glance or two, just for the sake of contrast. Adjust your dials most carefully, citizens. Herewith presenting Senator Theodore Bilbo, picture number 1. Scene: the chamber of the Mississippi State Legislature. Time: March 23rd, 1944. The speaker. The chair recognizes our distinguished guest, the Honorable Theodore Bilbo, United States Senator from the state of Mississippi. Now, at this moment, I cannot urge you too strongly to continue the valiant fight to uphold our racial integrity. We must renew our faith and allegiance to the color line. For your information, I have found that certain Negro organizations are determined to secure passage of anti-poll tax measures. It's their first wedge toward the fulfillment of a dastardly equality program which Negro leaders have launched throughout the South and throughout the nation. That equality they must not and will not attain. After his stirring appeal to the legislature, Senator Bilbo informs a small group of friends in confidential tones. You know, gentlemen, I found out that a prominent national official asked Southern colleges and universities to open their doors to Negroes. You know what I told him? Well, I'll tell you what I told him. I said, Negroes will never get into our universities. You Negro-loving Yankees can go straight. As a member of the Senate of the United States, Theodore Bilbo is an honorable man. We do not intend to prove otherwise. Here is picture number 2. Now, Senator Bilbo speaking. This is Representative Mark Antonio of New York speaking. Yes, what do you want? Senator, I just got a letter from a lady who lives in my district. It seems that she wrote you that letter about your filibustering against the FEPC. Well, she says she stated her case fairly, and she also says that as a reply, you wrote her one of the dirtiest letters possible. Well, yes, I think I did. Well, Senator, she also says you addressed her with the greeting, "My dear Dago." Is that correct? Of course, that's correct. That's what I call her. She's a whop, ain't she? That lady's Italian, Senator. If that's what you mean. I just thought you'd like to know that the lady has 3 brothers in the army in Europe. One of them has been killed in action already. You know, if you had a shred of decency in you, you'd apologize for that letter. I never apologize. Why she's getting off like that. Listen, she really would have been scorched if I was mad. Theodore Bilbo is an honorable man. We do not intend to prove otherwise. Here is picture number 3. United States Senate. Time, the 30th of June, 1945. Senator Bilbo is filibustering against passage of the Fair Employment Practices Commission, and during his prolonged dissertation to the gentleman of the following occurs. The senator from Mississippi may continue. Gentlemen, I have been hearing much talk about the supposed bravery of our Negro soldiers. I have it on good authority and from some of the highest ranking generals in our army that our Negro troops overseas are an utter and abysmal failure. They're just no good. And as for giving them a vote, why, they'd only sell their votes to the highest bidder anyway. So why give it to them in the first place? At the same moment, deep in the jungle of an embattled Pacific island, a Negro soldier pens a note back home to his family. And maybe this works pretty hard, Margaret, but it's a job you just have to do. It's been 3 days now, had no sleep. Their bombers are still paying us visits. And it still doesn't look like the war is going to be over soon. But we have to keep on. Just keep on. I know. I just know everything is going to turn out all right. But when we finally get back, the folks will realize what we've done. I'll bet they look at us differently. You know, for the first time, they'll see that bullets can kill anybody. They'll see, black or white, when blood runs out on the ground, it's all the same color. That's what the Negro GI thought. But back in the chamber of the United States Senate, Theodore Bilbo thought differently. I have it on good authority, and from some of the highest ranking generals in our army, that our Negro troops overseas are an utter and abysmal failure. When Senator Bilbo made that statement, he was standing under the roof of the United States Senate. It is very safe in the United States Senate. A bomb hasn't fallen there for quite some time. You must understand, please, this is merely a portrait, an interesting portrait, of a duly elected representative of the American people. For you see, Theodore Bilbo is an honorable man. We do not wish or intend to prove otherwise. Here is picture number 4. Though the senator has firm convictions on certain subjects, there is seen a mounting tide of sentiment equally firm, equally convinced that the senator errs. On the 10th of August, Senator Bilbo, it is the opinion of the Committee of Catholics for Human Rights that your conduct toward racial minorities is a chilling deterrent to worldwide belief that America is the symbol of democratic freedom and human rights. In a recent statement to the press, you attacked the Jewish people of the United States on the grounds that their race had damned and crucified Christ. You used this highly metaphysical argument to damn, vilify, besmirch, and otherwise persecute the Jewish people in America to further your own political ends. By lucid contrast, a few days after his attack on the Jews, Senator Bilbo is stricken suddenly with a strange ailment. He is put aboard a train and speeds northward for treatment. And is it not strange that the senator demands to be taken to the Mayo Clinic? Is it not strange when you consider that the Mayo Clinic was founded and operated by the Mayo brothers, 2 members of the Jewish race professing the Jewish faith? But obviously, the senator is not loath to take advantage he returns to the floor of the Senate with another plan for the American Negro. Gentlemen, for the best interest of the nation and all concerned, I believe a colony for American Negroes should be established on the west coast of Africa, bordering the state of Monrovia. Because of the exigencies of the time, any Negro who is race conscious and smart should be ready and more than willing to settle down in such a colony in West Africa. The very same day in the halls of the Senate, hallowed by the figures of men the likes of Lincoln and Jefferson, Theodore Bilbo, as a representative of the American people, had this to say. I cannot vote for the appointment of Mrs. Franklin Roosevelt as delegate to the United Nations Organization for the United States. No. She is a woman who has professed friendship for the Negro elements in America. She has no place representing us abroad. Mr. President, the chair recognizes the senator from Idaho. Mr. President, I should like to congratulate the senator from Mississippi. He doesn't know it, but he just paid a splendid compliment to Mrs. Roosevelt by voting against her. Mr. President, gentlemen, please, I'd like to add one more note. A word of warning to our senator from the South. It isn't going to be long now, Senator, before the people of Mississippi see the light and knock you out of office on that part of your anatomy where your few brains are undoubtedly located. You must understand, please, this was merely a portrait, an interesting portrait of a representative of the American people, for, after all, Senator Theodore Bilbo is an honorable man. He is looked upon as such by the eyes of the law. He is an honorable man. We did not intend to prove otherwise. The script for 1 out of 7 is written by James Edward Moser. Gil Dowd is the producer, and music by Otto Clare at the Hammond organ. The material used in tonight's program was taken from authoritative files and from dispatches by Associated Press and International News Service. Listen next week, same time, same station, for 1 out of 7. This is ABC, the American Broadcasting Company.
Currently a muted button.
Wowsies. As I say, a show that powerful is not going to last that long. 6 months later, the same crew and group of people around Jack Webb brought out Pat Novak for Hire, which quickly attracted a sponsor and went pretty well. In retrospect, Senator Bilbo was up for election 6 months after this program aired. He was returned to the Senate with a substantial vote, but the Senate refused to seat him, and it looked like he might not be back in the Senate until the Southern Democrats created a firestorm, and he was seated and served another term.
Very good. Thank you very much, Jack.
Thank you, Jack. Good.
Yeah. In deference to
My friend
Jack's comment earlier that different voices that Webb utilized, the different dialects that he utilized were impressive. I just wanted to point out that his colleagues at KGO, after this series had been running for a while, referred to him as Jack Webb, the man of 1,000 voices, all alike.
Oh.
Yeah, I've heard that one too. Yeah.
And I think there's some truth in that. All right. So we shall proceed. First of all, remind me, are we doing the quiz before the main program or after the main program? Does anybody know?
The past times you've had the quiz before, but Sally didn't deliver the answers until the end.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, I just forgotten because I wasn't here last month. All right. So, how about we call upon the Honorable Treasurer. Is the Honorable Treasurer still with us? I believe she is.
Well, first the hat as membership chairman. We had one new member since the last meeting, so we're up to now 118 paid members.
Nice.
And as to the treasury, we had receipts during the last month of $54.22 and expenses of $142.59, which leaves us with a balance of $7,553.96. So we are in good shape.
Bravo. And thank you very much, Joni.
Sure.
May I hear from the Honorable print librarians, Mark and Marcia Bush? Anything, any rentals at all? Well, I hope we didn't lose them.
Marcia, you're muted.
Marcia, you are on mute. You need to unmute.
Unmute.
I wonder if I can do it.
Oh, there we go.
There we are.
All right. Sorry to say there's been no action with the library.
Okay. I suspected as much, but I had to ask. It's part of my job. And let's see now. We are going to call upon the Right Reverend recorded sound librarian, Kathy McCara. Well, co-librarian with, is Kathy here with us?
Yes, she's also muted right now. Kathy, you need to unmute.
Okay. The same are nothing to report at all.
Okay, very good. Well, not very good, but but very expected. Okay. All right, then. I think at this point, we can call upon our worthy quiz mistress, Sally Stevens, to begin.
I think she dropped out of the call. She may be coming back.
Oh, okay. Because I did see her earlier.
Our vice president could talk to us about the upcoming programs.
Well, we can call upon the worthy vice president while we wait for Sally to try to make her way back in.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, worthy vice president.
Yes, we shall stall for time. I will do an exhibition of juggling for you while we wait for Sally to come back.
That's going to be a neat trick.
Now, notice these three identical chainsaws that I'm using here.
This is
Upcoming
radio.
programs,
If a ventriloquist could make it, why not a juggler of chainsaws?
Exactly. If a ventriloquist can do it, why can't I?
Yeah, indeed.
I understand we're cooking up a program, some shows for October.
Yes, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Let us discuss the premise of performing a radio drama via Zoom with a cast consisting of members who, many of whom, obviously, as we know from our attendance this evening, live in other areas of the country. And since what we are attempting to recreate is radio drama, it really doesn't matter whether we can see you or not. What's important is that we can hear you. So, with that in mind, Jack, will you tell us about the two scripts that have been chosen for this worthy attempt to entertain via Zoom?
Yes, we'll have 45 minutes of entertainment. There's a 15-minute kids program called Popeye Goes to the Zoo. And then John Abbott is going to give us a 30-minute version of yours true, Johnny Dollar. And all of those roles are eligible in terms of anybody that wants to audition for them, regardless of where you live or hang your hat.
All right.
And I think the rehearsals are going to be done over Zoom, as well as the performance. So there will be a visual aspect to it for those who can see.
Right, but even the people who are just now calling in, I don't see any
They
reason
can
why
still
they can't participate.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, you know,
It'll just make the rehearsals
as long as they have
less,
email.
Right. It'll just make the rehearsals,
Yeah,
especially in terms of sound effects, a little more challenging to time out. So we will need to take time to figure that out. I think Sally is back with us now. Yes.
Sally, say hello.
Hello.
Welcome, old worthy quiz mistress.
Why, thank you. I'm having connectivity issues, so I'm feeling great.
Yeah, so am I.
It's been happening all day.
I'm sorry.
Lovely.
So, all right. Are we ready? Is it my turn? I'm sorry I missed most of the business meetings, so I'll want a copy of those minutes.
Yeah, well, what a convenient time for the internet to drop out, for goodness sake.
Right? Now I got
There's also a recording, Sally, so you'll be able to watch the recording if you want to
go.
really get filled in. If you don't trust the secretary to accurately record the proceedings.
Oh, the recorder has my complete confidence. I will tell
Mine
you
too.
that. Does a wonderful job.
I got my pencil ready because I'm going to play as well.
Oh, okay. I have to make you the host.
Sheet for me.
Sally, I have to make you the host.
Okay, well, while Wendy is making me the host, please, if you would like to, get your piece of paper and a pencil, or be ready to play on the screen because it's quiz time. Da, da, da,
Da. Oh.
Okay, I've made you co-host, Sally, so you should be able to launch the poll.
So
if you don't, then I'll make you the full-on host.
Yep, I see it. I will launch it in just a moment. I will give everyone about 15 more seconds to get your piece of paper and a pencil or to be ready. Thank you, Edgar. I see you're ready. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Wendy. Can you tell I've been doing school online all week? Can you tell?
Do I get a gold
Does everyone
star?
have their pencils?
Do I?
Does everyone have their Good. All right, we're ready to go.
Oh, you're the
Now
teacher
remember,
I've always wanted.
If you hit the poll, you will be going probably faster than me. So if you need to hear it, I will be reading the full question and the answers twice. You may move ahead on the poll. You don't have to pace with me, but you can. And remember, the answers are anonymous, so don't worry if you get it wrong.
Did you start the poll, Sally? Because I'm not seeing it.
To launch it now.
Ah! Yay. Thank you.
Number 1.
Vancouver.
Wait, first I'm going to mute everybody.
Yeah, because people will call out answer.
Yeah, someone already did.
It doesn't necessarily mean it was the right one, but it was.
Wait a minute. I remember how to do that. The power.
You hit the participants.
Mute all. Such a great sound. Okay. Number 1. Which president's wife was the first lady to speak on network radio? Martha Washington, Mary Todd Lincoln, Lou Hoover, Jackie Kennedy. Which president's wife was the first lady to speak on network radio? Martha Washington, Mary Todd Lincoln, Lou Hoover, Jackie Kennedy. Number 2. On Fibber, McGee, and Molly, Wallace Wimple usually referred to his spouse by the nickname Sweetie Face. But what was the wife's actual first name? A. Geranium. B. Cornelia. C. Malvina. D. Millicent. On Fibber, McGee, and Molly, Wallace Wimple usually referred to his spouse by the nickname Sweetie Face. But what was the wife's actual first name? Geranium. Cornelia. Malvina. Millicent. Number 3. Soap operas usually named the heroine in their program's title. Which of these soaps did not? A. The Romance of Helen Trent. B. Kitty Keene Incorporated. C. Just Plain Bill. D. Stella Dallas. Soap operas usually named the heroine in their program's title. Which of these soap operas did not? The Romance of Helen Trent. Kitty Keene Incorporated. Just Plain Bill. Stella Dallas. Number 4. It was rare for women to direct kids' radio westerns, but one directed the Tom Mix Ralston Straight Shooters. Who was she? A. Jean Burkett. B. Mary Affleck. C. Shirley Herman. D. Elizabeth Gibson. It was rare for women to direct kids' radio westerns, but one directed the Tom Mix Ralston Straight Shooters. Who was she? Jean Burkett. Mary Affleck. Shirley Herman. Elizabeth Gibson. Number 5. Which singer debuted the song God Bless America on radio in 1938? A. Dinah Shore. B. Sophie Tucker. C. Frances Langford. D. Kate Smith. Which singer debuted the song God Bless America on radio in 1938? Dinah Shore. Sophie Tucker. Frances Langford. Kate Smith. Number 6. One episode of Frontier Gentlemen had J.B. Kendall going to a small western town in the mid-1800s which had a Lady Justice of the Peace. In what territory or state would that town have to be? A. Wyoming. B. Nevada. C. Colorado. D. New Mexico. One episode of Frontier Gentlemen had J.B. Kendall going to a small western town in the mid-1800s which had a Lady Justice of the Peace. In what territory or state would that town have to be? A. Wyoming. B. Nevada. C, Colorado. D, New Mexico. Number 7. This series, based on a comic strip, was named for the wife who had a hungry husband, 2 kids named Alexander and Cookie, plus a dog named Daisy. Name that show. A, My Friend Irma. B, Ozzie and Harriet. C, I Love Lucy. D, Blondie. This series, based on a comic strip, was named for the wife who had a hungry husband, 2 kids named Alexander and Cookie, plus a dog named Daisy. Name that show. My Friend Irma. Ozzie and Harriet. I Love Lucy. Blondie. Number 8. This popular radio personality celebrated the 10th anniversary of her show in May 1944, airing it with a packed audience filling Madison Square Garden. Who was that lady? A, Nyla Mack. B, Mary Margaret McBride. C, Gertrude Berg. D, Mercedes McCambridge. This popular radio personality celebrated the 10th anniversary of her show in May 1944, airing it with a packed audience filling Madison Square Garden. Who was that lady? Nyla Mack. Mary Margaret McBride. Gertrude Berg. Mercedes McCambridge. Number 9. Ruth Woodman's advertising agency had a contract to create and produce a Western radio series sponsored by 20 Mule Team Borax. She did so and also wrote all the scripts for that program. What was that series? A, Aunt Jenny's Lusty Tales. B, Tonya and the Lone Stranger. C, Sally and Wendy's Ranch. D, Death Valley Days. Ruth Woodman's advertising agency had a contract to create and produce a Western radio series sponsored by 20 Mule Team Borax. She did so and also wrote all the scripts for that program. What was that series? Aunt Jenny's Lusty Tales. Tonya and the Lone Stranger. Sally and Wendy's Ranch. Death Valley Days. Number 10. Only one radio whodunit had a female lead and a female director and a female writer. What was that program? A, Meet Miss Sherlock. B, Affairs of Anne Scotland. C, Miss Pinkerton Incorporated. D. Philco Mysteries. Only one radio whodunit had a female lead and a female director and a female writer. What was that program? A. Meet Miss Sherlock. B. Affairs of Anne Scotland. C. Miss Pinkerton Incorporated. D. Philco Mysteries. Tally your answers. Finish the poll. I will allow just a few more seconds. I see a few more numbers coming in, but we will do the answers following our program. Stay tuned. As we do in school, the window for answering the poll is getting smaller, smaller, smaller. And it's over.
What grade do you teach?
What?
What grade do you teach?
Third.
Uh-huh.
Third.
You're all.
Oh, I wish you had been my third grade teacher. Mine was the Wicked Witch of the West.
Mine was Miss Fury.
Hey, Michael,
Alrighty. Yes?
could I have just a moment or two, before we get into the real stuff here? We know that some people have been having issues receiving emails from the club's mail list.
Mm-hmm.
So what I am going to do for the Johnny Dollar presentation, I'm going to send out an email to all the club members from my email account. That gets rid of the mailing list part of it. So if you see emails from Johnny Dollar, that's me. And we'll use that as a means to start setting up auditions and that sort of stuff.
All right.
Good stuff.
Well done. All right. As I mentioned before the meeting actually began, I'm unfortunately not going to be able to stick around because I have several hours worth of work to do this weekend, and I want to get as early a start on it as possible. And so therefore, I'm going to ask Mr. Jim Pasquale to unmute, or Wendy, if you would unmute him, and ask him to please introduce our main program this evening. And I'll bid all of you a fond good evening, and we'll talk again next month, I hope.
Yeah.
Good night. Good night. Jim, are you with us? He's still on mute. I can see that.
Yes.
There we go.
Let's see. He unmuted.
I'm not muted anymore.
Awesome. Thank you.
All
Here
right.
I am.
Very good. Well, thank you, Michael, for
Thank you.
being with us.
And Jim, can you introduce our speaker?
Yes, I will do that. I will do that, Mr. Jim O'Brien,
Right.
journalist with the Air Force, covering the space program, worked for CBS News, worked in the White House, just has worked everywhere and has lots of interesting stories for us. And he will tell us all about it. Take it away, Jim.
Just a second. Let me mute everybody first, and then we'll let Jim go. I'll give you the thumbs up, Jim, when we. Oh wait, mute all. There we are. Okay. And then we have to unmute Jim. Jim, can you unmute? There you go. All right, take it away, Jim.
Just in case, I prepared some of the comments tonight on notes so you can read them in case I can't say them out loud. And I did one thing I discovered, that might have been better in terms of planning. Beside, we wanted to make this a green screen for a chroma key or something like that. No, ran out of time. So now it looks like, as it was commented earlier, it's a box central. You can see the banker's box here and banker's box there. Anyway, that's pretty much the way it is, and we're trying to suffer through it. Anyway, I did work for CBS News. I was in the United States Air Force. I was in the White House during the Nixon administration. The president appointed me, and I arrived in Washington the day he resigned. That's how the government works. It doesn't work. I was actually hired a year before, and then the process took that much time. So it made something for a commentary later on in life. I wanted to tell some of the people that in my life, having begun as a young kid from Iowa, and all of a sudden after getting into the United States Air Force, was sent to Cape Kennedy. Just at the time, 3 years after President JFK had said, we want to get to the moon and come back. And so it was a very interesting time to arrive there. But it was also the same time as some of you know, many of you know, was Vietnam was hot and heavy going then. So of the choices, I was much better off going to Cape Kennedy. What I have here is a list of some of the people that I have met, and then a few comments about each person. And then we'll go through some of the other things. Since everyone is muted, you can hold up your hand or hold up a note, or we can wait until the end and try to finish it. I do have one comment that we talked about earlier. You talked about doing a group meeting and people at remote locations all contributing to some program simultaneously. One of the problems that you're going to have is something called latency. Latency means that, which is evidenced in video by saying something and then the sound comes later, or the reverse. But 5G, which is just becoming something in the US, will take care of that. And that's one of the advantages of 5G. But if this event, we try to do this event, but first, latency is going to play a big factor. It's because of when you try to have an orchestra together, the horns are in New York, the violin is in Los Angeles, and the drums are in Chicago. They're never in sync. They can never be in sync. They're going to be, they are today very good, but not one for one. It's even worse in medicine. In medicine, you have, and it's been experimentation for 30 some years, 40 some years of remote operations. A doctor will be, the best doctor is in Chicago and the patient is in Vietnam. Well, and he's running, the surgeon takes and says, oh, we'll move the knife here and curve. If you have latency, the other end doesn't know what's happening. It really can produce terrible results. But 5G, again, is one of the features of 5G is to have latency close to zero. Enough of that. And I notice we haven't lost everybody yet, so I guess we can continue. Anyway, arriving at Cape Kennedy, I graduated in 1964 from the University of Iowa, and at that time, I had a wife with me, and she was ready to deliver, and we were supposed to report in Florida on delivery day. I asked them if we couldn't change that, and yes, of course, it was able to do that. So we started a career living in public housing. It's called officers' quarters at the Patrick Air Force Base. One of the features was we were exactly 100 feet from the Atlantic Ocean. It was living against at the ocean side and having your house paid for. What a wonderful thing to start. At any rate, it was an interesting time, but as a new officer, one of the first things I had to do was get myself out of what was called the tech lab. The tech lab was a facility where we were processing all of the film that was shot, because everything was done on film in those days. In '64, we had a U-2 on the base, and the U-2 would leave in the morning, go down the runway, up into the air, and go straight up. And then it flew south, and it flew over Cuba, and it come back, and the film, of course, was very highly classified then, and that was processed in this tech lab, which is still there today. The facility was interesting, and I learned quite a bit, but my degree was in journalism, so I wanted to be in the information office. I went down to the information office and asked them if they needed some help. Well, President Kennedy made his announcement in '61. This is now '64. We're 3 years later, and everybody's geared to landing a man on the moon. Said, yes, we would like to have somebody here. So I did that, and then one of the things was when we had visitors, we'd have to take them around the Cape and to show them this and that and what was going on. Well, President Johnson was assigned to come to the Cape. He brought Air Force One, and we had a short runway, which would just accommodate, at that time, it was a Boeing 707, and it would just accommodate that. We got to the Cape, and then the president had with him the Chancellor of West Germany, Willy Brandt. And they went off to the NASA side. We had the Air Force side at Cape Kennedy. The other side was the Merritt Island Launch Area, or NASA. And the troops went off, and I stayed at the Cape at the skid strip with aircraft. And Bill Moyers, who was the president's press secretary, came off the runway. So where is the POTUS? Where's the POTUS? POTUS, P.O., the President of the United States. And no one wanted to really raise their hand and say, oh, I know where he is. Well, I did raise my hand because I did know where it was. And of course, at that time, the Cape and Mila was a classified and secure area. So not everybody really did know, but I was in the office where you had to know where things were. Gladly, I raised my hand. Said to Moyers, what'll I do? He said, you come with me. We jump in the car with the Secret Service. We go roaring down this lane and that lane and over to the vehicle assembly building. I followed Moyers out of the car and say, where do I go? And he said, you follow me. So we went through this crowd of people at the vehicle assembly building, a 50-story building capable of holding 4 Saturn V's, and into the launch control area. And I remember that after we came through the door, the first thing we did was go into an escalator, and inside the elevator was the President of the United States, Secret Service, Willy Brandt, the Chancellor of West Germany, and me, Lieutenant O'Brien. At that time, there was no cell phone to take a picture. There was no film cameras to take film. So you'll have to take my word for it. But it did happen, and it was, a big life-changing event. It was, wow, it's not a bad place to be. And so then other people that I was able to meet while I was there was Werner von Braun. And von Braun was the father of the Apollo program. And he was a very interesting man. Of course, he was one of the German scientists from World War II in Germany. And he spoke with a very heavy accent, a German accent. And he was always talking about der NASA. Der NASA. This was the NASA. And so we would have some fun with that. But the head of the Kennedy Space Center was Dr. Kurt H. Debus. Dr. Debus was also a German scientist, and he had what was a status symbol of the time in Germany as a dueling scar, and the left side of his cheek had been cut in a duel that he had performed in college, which was then sort of thing like if you were going to be in a fraternity or a sorority, you have certain things that would mean something to your society, and that was something. Dr. Debus was an interesting person, a very kind man. Followed by his meeting him, of course, Vice President Humphrey was a visitor to the Cape, and also someone else. Since my name is O'Brien, but it's by adoption. My original name is Danish, but my name is O'Brien. So we were seeing 4,000 news media every 60 days during the Gemini program, which is something that started in '64 too. So as a public affairs person, you need to learn things to work with the press. And so I actually learned, even though I was a Lutheran, was when it was time for Mass, when you could go to Mass at one place or another. Well, that was worked out because eventually the Pope's brother came to the Cape and wanted a tour, was given a tour, of course. He didn't have to ask for that, but it was Cardinal Ludovici Montaigne. And at the time, to me, that was a fun and a very interesting thing to do. Besides the Cardinal, other people were coming to the Cape all the time. Vice President Humphrey came. But one of the most people that was interesting to me, who was assigned to the Cape as the commander of the base. The base had a 2-star major general commanding the base, and it was David M. Jones. Well, that's a pretty common name to everyone if we hear that, except David Jones, General Jones, had been in World War II. He was one of the pilots flew on Doolittle's raid. Besides Doolittle's raid, he also went to Europe and North Africa and was captured and spent 2 years as a POW. During the 2 years as a POW, he made 61 escape attempts and was caught every time. But he was one person who didn't give up, and they made the movie Great Escape with Steve McQueen, and that was Steve McQueen is playing the part of David Jones. Very interesting man. Besides that, the other one is an interesting story. And at the beginning, before we were all getting on the line tonight, the Emperor Haile Selassie had come to the Cape, and we were at the Hilton. The Hilton was one of the newest hotels on the beach, and so they brought Haile Selassie. And remind you that this is actually 1965, and 1965. We were still pretty deep. We were in the deep South in Florida, and we were still deep at the beginning of civil rights movements. So the Emperor Haile Selassie was sitting in the dining room and waiting for his meal. No one of the staff there would serve him, not one person. And it was the State Department escort was with him. We were back in the back of the kitchen, and he was telling the staff, "You've got to feed the king. You've got to feed the," and then he used one of the expletive deleted words, blanking king. And the king was fed, but it was, to me, as a new kid from Iowa, it was pretty shocking to see something like that had how people were treated, and a very interesting time. So we can go on and say later on, I did, after the Air Force, went to CBS News and met President Johnson again. I met him at Apollo, the launch day of Apollo 11, because the president attended the Cape, went to the Cape and to see the launch. And later on, after President Nixon was left office, I met later Bird Johnson because we filled a form. There was a report that the GSA, I was assigned to GSA, and they wanted a report on presidential papers because my then boss, who was the head of GSA, had told President Nixon that, of course, we're going to keep your papers private. And of course, that did not fly very well at the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue. So there was, and still is, a federal report and the result of litigation that worked out in the government's favor. Some of the other people that have I've been visited with and had a chance to talk to Of course, President Ford, because I worked for him as soon as the president left office, so that was day 2. Besides President Ford, President Reagan, and H.W. Bush. Now, one of the other people that was an interesting person to meet was John Hart. We did events besides presidential trips and presidential funerals, which I have in my little history book of my life, is that I buried President Johnson, President Eisenhower, President Truman, and it doesn't sound right when we say that, well, I buried them. Well, no, I didn't really bury them. We prepared the CBS coverage at the funeral site. But John Hart was one of the correspondents, and this is a long, long time ago, so not many of you will remember John Hart, but he had very deep-set eyes, so much so that we always had the Hart light. We had a special light that would sit and be put in place to shine against his eyes so that you could see him, because in those days television required a great deal of light to see. Well, besides that, one of the other people was a World War II correspondent and a CBS correspondent, Charles Collingwood. He had been in Europe, and he was at in the rail car when the end of World War II was signed, as opposed to in Japan it was the battleship Missouri, which we celebrated recently. Also, Richard C. Hotlett. Richard C. Hotlett was a CBS correspondent, one of Ed Murrow's boys, as was Collingwood. And then there was Andy Rooney, and Andy Rooney, when I went to the government, I wrote him a letter saying I was having a good time and things were fine. And he wrote me back a letter, which was fun. And he said, "It's very comforting to know that you're in charge and you're doing things well in Washington." Well, this was typical Andy Rooney, because he didn't mean a word of that, for sure. I'm pretty sure of that. Last person, not the last person, but one of the other people was Bill Stout. Bill Stout was also a CBS correspondent. He was on the West Coast mostly, and also in Vietnam. Bill Stout had a cameo appearance in a movie called The Ugly American. The star of that movie is Marlon Brando. Stout, I met him when I had to go to LA, because in Los Angeles is where they made the Command Module at North American Rockwell. And we went out there for some of the coverage. Well, Bill, one morning, since I was brand new, he was going to show me a few things. And so we sat down for breakfast, and he says to me, "Okay, all right, now you're going to have a bull shot." I said, "Well, yeah, what's that?" And so that was vodka and beef bouillon. I don't know how many of you have had a bull shot, but I can tell you that one is quite enough, because if he's pouring, it's more than enough, because it was 50-50. And that if you're a vodka drinker, you'll know that that would be pretty good. You must be Russian if you're having that. So besides that, I brought a few things to show you from the olden days. This is what was tied to every bag of film that got on an aircraft and was going to New York. And what it was for was so that it would be identified, because it was film. There was no tape control. You weren't feeding tape to anybody. You weren't having a connection. You weren't even having any kind of Zoom meeting at all. So we had to have things like that. Here is another device. This is a small camera, full color, HD with sound and storage, and will shoot night vision. That's what the little glasses you're seeing, some of it besides the center is the lens. This device is now sold as a body cam that you can buy for yourself and wear it around while you're videoing whatever you want to. This is the other end of the line from when I started at CBS in 68, but in full color was just about to come on to the market in 68. Still, there were only a few few color broadcasts. The whole network, each network of the three, ABC, NBC, CBS, were not at that time full color. But the cameras that they used, the camera, and when you translate this to the football guys, the color cameras at that time were something like 300 pounds, and cabling was an inch and a half, 2 inches thick, the cable, and you had to go to a football stadium and cable this up and put the cameras in there, and then after the game take them down and move on down the road. Quite an event in those times, but that's an interesting aside to me anyways, in the technical side of how far we've come from a camera that the output from this camera would be better than what was available then in those days. And one of the other technical things of those times that the Air Force and the military did have secure color television. And the color television at Cape Kennedy was a camera studio, a secure camera studio that had a link to Washington and Andrews Air Force Base, because that was part of the Systems Command, which ran Cape Kennedy for the Air Force. And in those days, you had to have a solid copper line from one site to the other. It couldn't go up on microwave. It couldn't go up right then. There was just the beginning of satellite television. But you could not use anything other, a solid copper. And that was through the early 70s before that changed. That doesn't, in our group, that doesn't mean too much because we like radio a lot, but television was definitely the thing then, and is today. Old time radio, one of the things that I look forward to, I see evidences of it coming, is that there probably will be an old time television eventually group. Right now it's very fraction, but you can see old shows. And in many cases, you can see them for free. There is one group of streaming media that's just started is by NBC, and it's called peacocktv.com. And you can get on that for free. And you can see many of the old television shows at no cost at all. But besides that, back to where I was going, and one more example in terms of what the size of color was. This is 2-inch videotape, and that's 2 inches wide, and that is the videotape. This is represents 10 minutes. That's all, 10 minutes, and then so 60 minutes is going to be out the size of an old LP record and 2 inches thick. The change in miniaturization is just truly amazing. Considering what it was at one point in time, a long time ago. Some of the other things that are souvenirs of the past are, the patches that every astronaut wore on his hand, on the suit. And this is Mercury, and then that was one man in a capsule. This is Gemini. This is 2 men in a capsule, and you have most of the crews here, when there are 2 men, there was all the Mercury 7 and then the Gemini guys, and then you move on to Apollo, and there's Apollo 11, and there is the rest of the Apollo series besides the Apollo. And this is Apollo 1, and Apollo 1 is Grissom, White, and Chaffee. They died in their capsule in January of 1967. At that point in time, I was still in the Air Force and in public affairs, and my boss, who was a full bird colonel, we were at a meeting, and he got a phone call. This was at 6:30 in the afternoon, in the evening, and learned of the fire, and immediately left that meeting. At that point in time, it was no one really knew what was going on. This was basically 6:30 was an hour after it happened. So there was not a lot of information. But besides the Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, you also had Skylab. Skylab was a space station early version of the space shuttle. And then last but not least was the ASTP. If anybody knows what that is, raise your hand, because no hands are going to come up. The ASTP was our only mission with the Russians in space, where we had an Apollo 5 rocket go into Earth orbit, and that was followed and met by a Soviet station, and the two docked, and that was the Apollo-Soyuz test project. The Soyuz was, of course, the Russians. These events were part of my life. This is where what I lived on was the Air Force Eastern Test Range. The test range was what tracked every launch from the East Coast, 5,000 miles into the Indian Ocean. And we had communications all down the 5,000 miles. And then during launches, you had rescue missions into the Indian Ocean. So those are some of the things that keep us busy, or have kept me busy. At CBS, I was originally hired in 1968 after I resigned my commission. It was still in the reserves, resigned my regular commission, and went to work for CBS at the Democratic National Convention and the Republican Convention. In '68, the Republican Convention was in Miami, and the Democratic Convention, as you know, was in Chicago in '68. It was the only time in my life I ever saw Jeeps going down the street with .50 calibers mounted and loaded in an American city. And it's interesting to see what we have now. It's just a time that I never thought I'd ever see again. But we haven't yet seen Jeeps going down the street, though. Now, to continue with that, the other things that are to me maybe of interest to you would be how I came to leave CBS and then go to the White House. Well, the reason is that I wanted to. I thought that working in the news business at the network level was great. At that point in time, CBS had a reputation of being the Tiffany network, and it was commonly referred to as that. It's not that today, but it was then. And so I thought that working inside politics would be an opportunity, and then you could come back and work back in news. Other people have done that many times. At the point in time, it was, I guess I was supposed to be going to a different business. I did work in President Reagan's campaign, and then that was followed by working in my own business. And there I did multimedia exhibits for mostly the federal government. And that pretty much covers what I've done so far. And I think that's pretty much what I can tell you really right now. If there's one last thing I did want to talk about is that I discovered a month ago was there's something called the oldest stereo recording is they think from some Chinese recordings made in 1901, and this is those are the recordings, and they're held now in Illinois or Indiana, and they're on the website. There are a couple of websites talking about the Chinese stereo recordings of 2001, and I'll give anybody that wants this the link to it, but anybody could find it with a Google search on Chinese stereo recordings 1901. You're going to end up at that place, and there are samples there of the music. If you've heard Chinese music in 1901, it was still what we hear today. And very interesting to hear that this was actually able to be encoded and recorded in 1901. That's a long time. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. And other than that, we'll go into the night.
Jim?
Yes.
Yeah, Jim, this is Bert Rood. I
Yes.
grew up in Minnesota, so I'm kind of interested to hear that you are from Iowa. Whereabouts in Iowa?
In Cedar Falls, and then raised in Des Moines and Iowa City. Iowa City is where the university is, the University of Iowa. It's still there today. It has a space connection, actually, because the physicists there named Dr. James Van Allen, who discovered
the Van Allen belt.
Van Allen belts. But in Iowa, if you've lived in Iowa, you know you suffer from the Minnesotans, because
yes.
the Minnesotans, they're all chasing Swedes through the weeds. But they seem that since Iowa is lower down, they have to look down. And there's so many Iowa, Minnesota jokes. We shouldn't share them now, because they're, again, Ola and Lena, all those jokes.
Yes, exactly. Well, fascinating presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. It is fun to have had the experiences. I really think in 2018, we were coming up on the 50th anniversary of the landing on the moon. And some people in Angelo State University in Angelo, Texas, invited a friend of mine who was the director of the Apollo coverage, and he asked me to go. And we were doing a presentation to the students for the Apollo 11. And at the same time, they had released a film called First Man. And the film called First Man is all about Neil Armstrong. Mm-hmm. And it's a really, I guess I maybe got into the Kool-Aid with it, but it is a good movie. And one of the things that it will shock lots of moviegoers is they did make an emphasis on it, which Neil said to many times in interviews, that there was really a lot of noise when the Apollo lifted off and flew into space. There was just an incredible amount of noise. But you have to remember, but who among us really? I was 15,000 feet away at the launch, but ignition was at T-7. This is a rocket that's 363 feet tall. You could put in the vehicle assembly building, which they put it together in, that you could make, it was made for 4 of them, because they thought Apollos were going to be like space shuttles. So they had 4. And this, to give you an idea of what it means, if you opened the door of one of the bays, you could slide this in, and you'd slide the entire UN building in and still have 6 inches around and have the whole building slide in. A large building. You can be 50 miles away, as President Bill Moyer's press secretary and I, and we're driving toward, he kept saying, well, aren't we there? Aren't we there? Because the building, you just drive at 50 miles an hour. It was still 50. Because it's Florida. Florida's flat. That you can, once you've cleared the pine trees, you have no reference. So it was a huge building. Really, really a big building.
Did you yourself ever have occasion to meet Ed Murrow?
No, Murrow had left CBS. He went where I ended up doing my last federal work, to the Voice of America. He was the director of Voice of America at the time, and had left CBS, quite frankly, because he was fed up with some of the people that were saying this is what you have to do. And so, he, of all things, he went to a government agency thinking that there he could do something. Well, I had the same experience, and it was, no, you can't. You can't.
Jim?
Yes.
Which of the presidents do you feel had the greatest appreciation for the space program?
Oh, President Johnson really did. And primarily because he was in charge, and he had been given this by President Kennedy. President Kennedy had put him in charge of it. And so this was a very positive thing, even because the counter to that at the time was what? Rioting in the streets about Vietnam. So here you have, and politically speaking, very smart, because the Apollo program, and at the time NASA, you wanted to build support. You had to build support for it because Congress is going to give you the money.
Money.
And in the end, they give you the money.
Good idea.
So the Apollo program had something in every state in the U.S. Something that was made for the Apollo was in every single state. Well, then you've got everything, every single congressman. And so that's part of the inside. That's still true today. It's still true today. If you want to do something, you've got to get support for it because support means money.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
At the maybe you don't want to tread into this, but the VOA has been in the news recently. Maybe I could put it this way: would you want to be at the VOA now?
Right now, the VOA is not what it was really meant to be at all. Because the problem is that many people, what happens in administrations, both Republican and Democrat, because that's all we've ever had, Republican and Democrat, if you're a part of the political group and on the presidential staff or something, the idea is to burrow in. In other words, because when you're, as I was, appointed by the president, you serve at the discretion of the president. And that means when the president leaves, you leave. And so people get used to having a really nice job. For example, I went to the White House and was a GS-14 at 30 years old. Now, even today, a 30-year-old GS-14 doesn't exist in the federal hierarchy, not really. But the point is that you have to make that government contract and make it work. And what happened was there is a large contingent that does influence the agency, because if you come on staff, this isn't just VOA, this is any of the federal agencies. When you come on staff and you're at first from the White House, well, you remember everybody's going to pay attention to you. But as soon as that White House person leaves, then you have a different situation to be in. But by that time, maybe you've spent enough time, and time is what counts in a bureaucracy. A lot of times in the military, you'd hear military people, it all counts toward 20. What does that mean? Well, the time that you're spending counts to your 20-year career. And so if you do something, for example, in my case, I was assigned and at graduation was assigned a regular commission. A regular commission as an officer is pretty much a job for life. Reason being is because if there's a reduction in force, who will you cut first? If you're going to have to riff or cut people, you'll take the reserves. And you have to get down to the regular commission. The regular commission is very small, but the reserves are what make up the bulk of either Army, Navy, whatever. But so that's why it's sort of a job for life. If you misbehave or something like that, there's no protection to that. There shouldn't be. But the career of if you want security in a career, a regular commission next to Supreme Court is a pretty good one.
Did you ever have occasion to meet Bill Paley, the head of CBS?
I did. Bill Paley, I didn't refer to him as Bill, but William S. Paley, there's a famous saying that he did pretty well for starting out with a cigar store, a Philadelphia guy. He actually hired as a president of the CBS network, a guy named Jack Schneider. And Jack Schneider was, when he was being interviewed by Paley, told Paley, he said, well, you know, I'm not Jewish, because Paley is Jewish. And Schneider thought, he said, no, that doesn't matter here. Where did that story come from? Well, it came from Schneider's son, Rick, who was a friend of mine, because he'd been hired at CBS News. And so that was a story that I can verify. And it was really interesting. It was also nice to hear that, you know, yes, if you were possibly had an Irish name, you could still make it at CBS.
Any other?
Well, I don't know. I'm waiting to hear how I did on the quiz. There were some of the answers that were just perfectly saying that, you know, Sally really has her handle on who's in the radio, and putting those in there. But there's someone really, where were you reaching? It's just
Not me at all. It is all Jack. I am simply the talking head.
See, this is good. Well, yeah, and thank you very much for.
Well, thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Well done.
Thank you, Jim.
Excellent job. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Are we ready?
Yes, Sally.
So let me start, because Jack did remind me that there was some email trouble. So if you did not see in the email the theme, or did not guess the theme based on these wonderful questions, our theme, in honor of the centennial of the 19th Amendment for the women's suffrage movement of finally receiving the right to vote. Woo! Jack made a wonderful quiz all about women in radio, which is awesome. And yes, he really found some interesting facts and interesting points. And I don't know, I did the quiz too. I haven't looked at the answer sheet, so who knows? This is gonna be very good. So I am ready to share the poll results, and I will go through the answers. So get your pencils and papers ready, children. It's time to see how you did on the quiz. Now remember, this is worth 10 points for your final grade. All right, I'm sharing the results.
Yep.
So number 1, which president's wife was the first lady to speak on network radio? Thank goodness none of us thought it was Martha Washington or Mary Todd Lincoln. Some of us did think maybe it was Jackie Kennedy, but most of us got it correct that it was Lou Hoover. And that was in 1929. So early radio. Number 2. On Fibber McGee and Molly, Wallace Wimple usually referred to his spouse by the nickname Sweetie Face, but what was the wife's actual first name? And if you were here last month, a couple months ago, you would know this. So hope you were paying attention. You maybe didn't study or didn't have your notes, but the answer is, oh, this was pretty evenly spread, but most of us knew Cornelia. Yay! How did we do, Frank? Number 3.
Oops.
Soap operas usually named the heroine in the program's title, but which of these did not? And what a tricky thing Jack did, that most of these had names in it. How sneaky of you, Jack. Well, none of us thought it was The Romance of Helen Trent. Good thing. Few of us thought maybe Kitty Keene. None of us thought Stella Davis.
No.
Most of us got it right with C. Just plain Bill. Not the star. So, Jack, who was the star? Do I have to unmute you? Hold on. Unmute yourself, sir. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, the question doesn't ask for the stop, it asks for the character.
Well, who's the character?
Bill the barber.
Well, okay. I'm not as interested in listening to a soap opera about Barber, gotta say. Probably listen to Helen Trent. All right. Number 4. It was rare for women to direct kids' radio westerns, but one directed the Tom Mix Ralston Straight Shooters. And who was she? This one was a challenging question because this was pretty spread across the board, but 7 of us got it right on the poll, at least. 7 of us got it right. It was Elizabeth Gibson.
Got it right. You got it right.
Oh my goodness.
Wait a minute. No, that was what everybody picked. Sorry, I'm looking at that. We're just kidding.
No.
It's Mary Affleck. So 2 of you got it right. I'm looking at
we
the
both
poll.
got it wrong.
I gotta look at the actual answers. What kind of teacher am I? Are you ready for your information lesson? Mary Affleck was married to Hurley Bradley, who played Tom Mix. The other 3, oh, Jack, this was sneaky of you. The other 3 are classmates of Jack French. None of whom went into radio. Well, that tricked me because I was like, oh, yeah, I recognize that name. Jack. Totally fooled me on that one. Well, fooled most of us on that one. I gotta remember to check my thing first. All right, number 5. Oh, good. Most of us got this one right. Which singer debuted the song God Bless America on radio in 1938? It was a big to-do. They made a whole stamp about it. I mean, really? Kate Smith. Nice job. Number 6. On one episode of Frontier Gentlemen, J.B. Kendall went to a small western town in the mid-1800s, which had a lady justice of the peace. Where was that? Oh, this was a tricky one, too. How evenly spread we were. The correct answer this time, the majority had it. Wyoming. In 1869, Wyoming Territory was the first to grant women the right to vote, hold public office, and serve on juries. So this law happened 50 years before the 19th Amendment gave the rest of the country those same rights. So had to be Wyoming because they were way progressive ahead of their time. Go Wyoming. Great place. Number 7, new page. All right, now we want to know which series was based on a comic strip. Was named for the wife who had a hungry husband, 2 kids named Alexander and Cookie, and a dog named Daisy. What show was that?
21%.
Most of us got that right. Blondie. I think it's still a comic strip, still too, isn't it?
Yep.
I think it's still going today too.
Yep.
When I check my comic pages in the weekend. Whoop. All right, number 8. This popular radio personality celebrated the 10th anniversary of her show in May 1934. Airing it with a packed audience, filling Madison Square Garden. Who was that? Oh, this was a tricky one too. It was pretty evenly spread here. Oops, number 8. And that lady with her 10-year show was B. Mary Margaret McBride. Which show was that, Jack?
That was the name of her show. It was an interview show. Mary Margaret McBride Presents.
There we go. Very popular. All right, number 9. Ruth Woodman's advertising agency had a contract to create and produce a Western radio show sponsored by 20 Mule Team Borax, which makes really good slime for the kids. She did so and also wrote all the scripts for that program. What was that series? I really wish it was Sally and Wendy's Ranch, because I'd listen to that show. Wouldn't you, Wendy? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Imagine the hijinks.
We would have some fun.
Oh, we would. Though I don't know, I'm also a little intrigued by Auntie Jenny's lusty tales.
Yes.
What's going on her ranch? Ooh. Though I'm also a little interested in Tonya and the Lone Stranger. Sounds like a really bad romance novel title. Yeah, one of those really bad paperbacks. Oh yeah, but no. The answer is Death Valley Days, which aired 1930 to 1944. Last one, number 10. Only one radio whodunit had a female lead, female director, and a female writer. What was that program? This one was a tricky one. Pretty evenly spread. A lot of us thought it was Meet Miss Sherlock or Miss Pinkerton. Not too many of us thought it was Affairs of Anne Scotland or Philco. But the answer is B. The Affairs of Anne Scotland, which had Arlene Francis as a private eye as the lead. Directed by Helen Mack. Written by Barbara Owens. And the series ran from 1946 to 1947, but unfortunately, there are no audio copies known to sources.
You still they can't hear you.
Oh, no, it's fine. They just gave the quiz.
Well done, Jack.
Thank you.
A very engaging, very interesting quiz. And I gotta say, I gotta brush up on some of my research because I don't know about the rest of you kids, but I'm not willing to share my score. You don't have to. You don't have to share your grades. It's private.
It is an anonymous poll.
Miss Stevens, 3rd grade.
You did a very nice job. Give yourself a pat on the back.
Thank
Good
you.
job, everybody.
He's very organized about it. He usually has the poll ready by the 1st of the month.
Yeah, and it's so hard to not look at it. Like I literally can't even open the email for a week because I'm like, I want to see it. I want to play too.
Yeah, it wouldn't let me play, but since I had to set up the poll anyway,
That's
it's probably
true.
just as well.
That's true.
That might have skewed the numbers.
Well, very fun. Very well done all around.
Yes, great stuff. My goodness. Let's see. Oh, Jim is muted.
Pass it back to you.
Oh, now he's not.
I'm unmuted now.
Whoa, look out, world.
Yes, you might have preferred me the other way, but we
Not at all.
we have completed all our official business, I think. So what do we do? Make a motion? I make a motion to close the meeting, or is there any other business we have to take care of? I don't think so. No other business.
Mind that, they want to keep in mind that Martin Graham's Nostalgia Convention is going to be coming up and online and free. There'll be some interesting parts of that. And of course, a lot of you guys have attended and are familiar with it.
And what are the actual dates?
Next weekend.
Oh, okay, great.
Can anyone tell me how Jay Hickerson's doing?
Last I heard, no better, no worse. But Karen, his wife, did say he's able to walk again, and he was doing some limited walking around outside, which hasn't done for several months.
That's good.
If I could add one, Rob Bamberger is going on the air with Hot Jazz Saturday Night again.
Yes, I'm so excited.
Oh, yay. They're bringing him back. Yeah.
They
I
are,
heard
yeah.
they were bringing the show back, but I didn't know Rob bleh, was hosting it this
He's
time.
agreed to host it for 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
Oh,
Who else could host that program?
well,
I'm so thrilled.
Yeah,
That is really nice.
it is.
it is.
Well, they said it was feedback. People called in and wrote letters and said we want them back.
Well, also,
good.
a lot of radio programs
I mean,
have
yeah.
had to cease production because of COVID-19. So Garrison Keeler's follow-on program, Live from Here, was canceled, and several other programs were canceled, and it was a perfect opportunity to slip old Rob into the mix.
Where can this be found?
WAMU on
Oh,
Saturday night.
good old AMU. Fantastic.
88.5.
Yep, or just you can get it on your smart speaker too.
Yep.
Sure.
Yep. And on your iPad and devices and all that.
If we write enough letters, will they bring the car guys back if we write enough letters?
Well, you can try, Jim. Just
well,
make sure they get postmarked from different areas.
Okay.
Disguise
I
your
just,
handwriting.
Tommy's
I want to hear
no
more
longer-
stories about 1986 Hondas again. I want to hear that story.
I think you can get it on a podcast.
Yeah, you still can get a few episodes, yep, on the podcast, yeah.
But it's always nice to have fresh material.
Well, Tommy's no longer with us, so that might be a little difficult.
A
Oh,
little difficult.
A lot difficult.
But not impossible.
They did run it without him, though.
I'm sure they could do a remote from heaven, you know.
there you go.
I wish.
Yeah, like Mark Allen called. I might get a call here.
That
Okay.
would be nice. Well,
Well,
great. I can keep this link open so people can chat after the meeting officially breaks up if they wish to.
thank you.
I make a motion that the meeting is closed.
I'll second it.
Aye.
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 Okay.
Is there a
Feel free to
website?
descend into socializing chaos.
Is there a website I can check you guys out at? What is your website?
Yeah, MWOTRC.com.
All right. I'm going to check it out and see what's up there. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Welcome.
And we also, it won't happen immediately,
there.
but Fred Burney records all of these Zoom club meetings and puts them on YouTube. So
Should we
if
stop
you
that now?
searched MWOTRC, you might find some.
It's on our
some
video
app.
page.
Should we
On
stop
the
the
menu at the
recording
top
now,
of the
Wendy?
page, there's a link for videos, and all of the meetings that we have
Wow.
are available to be watched.
Ah,
and
but
enjoyed.
has it been updated recently?
Yes, I just put last month's meeting up a couple weeks ago.
Ooh,
great.
Well
Everybody
done,
who
John.
didn't know that gets 5 demerits. Sally, write that
And
down.
Wendy.
We'll
Flag
have
it
to
by
have
the
some
merit.
extra credit work available.
Yeah,
You can bring your grade up.
But how many brownie points do you get for setting up Zoom?
Oh, like 1,000.
1,000 at least.
That's like
okay.
lifetime points.
Pile on the demerits. I don't care.
Good lifetime points.
Okay.
At least
On
as
that
long as the
note-
pandemic lasts.
Hey, Jack,
Should we stop the recording, Wendy?
Let me see if I can do that. Stop.